When Erik ten Hag was first brought to Old Trafford, he was seen as a long-term solution to many of the club's problems. A stalwart captain who was going to steady and plug all the holes in a sinking ship. Now it's 18 months later and that long-term plan seems in tatters. It's less welcome to death row records, it's more like welcome to death row. But what has gone wrong? Ineos aren't going to make any big decisions on the manager situation until the summer most likely. But it seems like the window for Erik ten Hag to impress new owners is shutting and the walls are starting to close in. So, what can Erik ten Hag do? And can he do anything? That is the question that many United fans are asking, and that is the question we're going to talk about today. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Casey Evans, and this has probably been a long time coming, me making content on YouTube. But here I am, and you know what? The first thing that we have to talk about when talking about Manchester United is Erik ten Hag. When talking about a manager, there are really two major factors that you have to consider: results and performance. Now, there's a third one there that's probably culture, but because we mostly get our information from a biannually article from The Athletic, it's really hard to talk about it. So we're going to talk about these two things. So, put that one down for now. We're going to firstly talk about the results. And yeah, they've not been that good. So many United fans are going to want to focus mainly on this season, but I think we need to focus on last season as well, because on one hand, yes, it was a positive one and we need to focus on that, but it also gives good context to why so many United fans are disappointed with this season so far. So last season, United came third. They got 75 points. That was 23 wins, 6 draws and 9 defeats. That's fine. That qualifies us for the Champions League. And what also should be mentioned is Erik ten Hag did deliver Manchester United their first trophy in about 5 years with the League Cup win against Newcastle United. So all in all, Champions League football in a season where you're rebuilding and a cup is fantastic. But there were some, let's say, hiccups. So obviously we had the 4-0 against Brentford at the start of the season. We had the 6-3 against Manchester City. The 3 there being a little bit misleading because City had really won the game and slightly given up when they allowed us to score. And the 7-0 against Liverpool, which was a complete and utter collapse. That's not good enough, obviously, for a title-winning side, but it was his first season. He looks to rectify that going into the next one. That's what many United fans thought. However, this season has been much worse already. United have already suffered 11 defeats in the league. Obviously, we just said they suffered 9 last season. We're in March. That's 2 more. That's obviously worse.
Oh, you can count. Good for you.
Also, that Champions League campaign that we mentioned, it was really good that United got back into the Champions League. Let's be honest about it, we embarrassed ourselves. We came bottom of a group, which had a hard team in Bayern Munich, but also 2 really easy teams in FC Copenhagen and Galatasaray, and we finished rock bottom of the group, and we were completely out of Europe. So when you're 18 months in, you need to be doing a lot better than that. That's the thing that most people are saying. Like, obviously, we're now way into his project. He should be kind of getting the results. He should be building on that 3rd place finished and still at least challenging or be in the mix for Champions League and not just outside it trying to get in. But some people would allow poor results if it wasn't for the performances. And I kind of have shown my hand here because this all like knits together. But let's get into the performances, because I feel like this is the major point that I need to talk about. So I feel like the most common complaint that most United fans have had this season is not actually the results. The results are bad, and I feel like everyone understands this, but it's the fact of how we've been playing. I think that most people are really concerned about that. Even when United win, it looks like a struggle. There's only a few points this season that United have looked comfortable. Let's just start by saying how Erik ten Hag says he wants to play football. And the last time he really commented on this was November 2023. And he said, the explanation, and this is of his style of football, from my point of view, was totally wrong. That I can't play like Ajax because I have different players. I came here with my philosophy based on possession, but I also want to combine it with the DNA of Manchester United and combine it with the competences and the characters of the players. We have seen what it was. We played very good football last season. And then he went on to say, We want to go more direct, but the explanation for my direct thought is we want to go for long balls. No, I don't want Andre Onana to go for long balls. I want to play out from the back. But when an opponent is going in a high press, it is a good option to go direct. But what I meant with directness is we want to press from different blocks and then go direct because we have the players like Rasmus Højlund, Marcus Rashford and Anthony and Bruno and Scott McTominay who are very good at it. And with the passing of Christian Eriksen and then the fullbacks joining in, that was my idea. Now, to me, that statement doesn't make that much sense. And the problem is that it's reflected on the football field. It doesn't seem like the players have a real idea of what style of football they want to play. Now, Ten Hag says, I want to build up from the back, but I also want to go long when I have to. Okay, but it does seem like in every single situation, United try and circumvent the midfield as much as possible. Mainly because Casemiro can't play on the ball, but Kobe Mainoo can. But that's only one player, and it doesn't really have, United don't really have that strength to go through the midfield. Problem is then that means we have to keep putting the ball in the air into kind of 50-50 situations, and then United keep losing the ball and then get attacked on transition, and we don't have the players to deal with that either. We obviously push up, and the players like Casemiro doesn't really have the legs anymore. Harry Maguire doesn't really have the legs. Varane kind of does. Dalot and Shaw can be mispositioned. It kind of just becomes this massive gloopy mess, and United are just then cut through like butter.
Is always the enemy of true justice. Thank you. You've always been a good friend.
This then leads into the next point, that we allow other teams too many shots on goal. Just to pick up two off the top of my head, 22 shots against Luton, they're 18th in the league. They've obviously been playing well against some teams, but still, that's insane. They had more shots than us in that game. And we allowed 17 shots against Newport in the Cup. They're a League One side. United shouldn't be that easy to play through and that easy for other teams to create chances. Obviously, some of those chances were from distance. You don't have the context of where those chances were from. But the fact that we can't get control of the game and we can't get the possession that stops them having that many shots, and they're allowed to have that many shots, it basically means that someone like Andre Onana has to make like 3 times as many saves in order to keep a clean sheet, and he's more likely to make a mistake if he's facing that many shots. So that's something. Like, the defensive side of this team doesn't make sense, and that stems from the fact that they can't control the game. But then, when United do get the ball, we just can't reliably create attacks, and that's another thing that's a problem. So in that statement, Ten Hag talks about how he wants to attack, but it does seem like it is one player gets the ball and we just Hail Mary it forward and hope that someone finds some space. There isn't a reliable sort of rotations in order to find some space. Obviously, Scott McTominay comes onto the field. I've given him a lot of stick on social media, but his idea is just to find some space, and he is probably, in terms of the team, one of the most, him and Højlund, the most reliable in terms of they will find space in the box for you to get it to them. But the problem is then how do those players out wide get it to them because the rotation's gone and the creative outlet's too far back because Bruno Fernandes is having to play further back because McTominay is playing further forward. And it's just disjointed. I'm trying to explain it now in a way that makes sense, but that's the thing.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me, though.
Ten Hag said in that statement, and it's something that he's been very clear about, is that he is not playing the same style of football that he was playing at Ajax. But the thing is, the thing that got Erik Ten Hag the job was the style of football that he was playing at Ajax and that identity that was able to put into his team. The issue is we're not seeing a different identity. We're seeing no identity. We're seeing some compromised styles and compromised tactics from the Ajax style of play, and that he's trying to implement to a different squad, and it just isn't working. If he can't have a style of play with 18 months, what is he going to do when basically we have a chance of a fresh start? Is it just going to kind of undermine us and mean we have to start later? And another thing that comes into this, and this is a point that I'm now going to bring in, because you didn't think we were going to talk about it because it seems to be that I was skirting around it, is the 400 million he spent. Because we're going to talk about the 400 million that I don't know how Erik Ten Hag has spent £400 million on this United squad. Now, let me be completely fair with him. It's not completely his fault. The reason that we're having to get this new ownership in and having to spend so much time getting new people in is because there is no structure in place. And if there was a structure in place, we would not have spent 85 million on Anthony. Now, let me just approach this from a completely fair point of view. And let me just try and tread different ground than what everyone else does. Obviously, Anthony cost £85 million. He's not worth £85 million, and he's not really been that good for United. Now, the reason we spent £85 million up front, and the reason we spent £85 million is partly on Ten Hag because it was the player we wanted, but it is also partly on the club because there was no one there who could go, no, that's a stupid idea, please don't do that. So fair enough in that regard. And in terms of the player not making the step up to the Premier League that well, that's happened to countless players coming from the Dutch league. So you've got to understand that that just happens sometimes, that a player can't make the jump. It's a different style of play and it's a different level. So sometimes you've got to put a risk factor, and better managers than Ten Hag have made that mistake. Okay, so fair enough. Right, we've assessed that. We've given him a bit of leeway. I've got to come back to that statement by Ten Hag and the fact that he wants to go direct. He's not the sort of player you give it to drive. He slows the game down and he gives you possession. So spending that much money on him and then saying, I'm going to play a direct style of football, which is not the sort of winger he is really, really weird. And the same goes for Lisandro Martinez, really. And I know Lisandro Martinez is a player that a lot of people love, me included. I think he's a great footballer. But if your idea is to suck up pressure, win it back, play it out of the back and then play up the field, that's a deeper line than what Lisandro Martinez was doing at Ajax. And it's a deeper line than what allowed him to play at the height he is. Now, obviously, the height comments were brought up constantly, but a defender can play at that height. That's fine. But the problem is when you're getting pushed back into the box, your ability to win headers becomes much more crucial. And you have a lot less space than what Lisandro Martinez usually has in other situations in order to stop it. So, by putting him back in the box, you're basically making him a worse defender. And that then means that why did you spend so much money on him if your style of football wasn't going to play to his strengths? And this, again, comes back to the fact there's no structure in place. But at the same time, what are we meant to do? Why are you spending this money? And then you look at other things, like this Casemiro. Obviously, he wasn't the player that he wanted, but the club sanctioned 60 million on him. I'm not going to put that one on Ten Hag, but that's a player that definitely has started to decline and isn't worth the money. Christian Eriksen and Johnny Evans were brought in on free transfers to be squad players, and they've become key members of the squad. Yes, through injury, but the problem is the team was light on squad members, so that became a necessity very quickly. Erik Ten Hag has been given the reins to spend 400 million, and yes, he shouldn't have. But when you look at the team he's assembled, it doesn't make sense, both from a value standpoint and also from what the manager himself has said he wants to do at the club. Right, I'm going to stand back up for the conclusion. So one of the issues with a one-camera setup is that you have to then put it back. So what does this all mean for Erik Ten Hag? Now, I'm not one of those fans who's going to grab my pitchfork and storm Old Trafford and demand that he's asked to leave. Like, at the end of the day, that's not me and not how I feel like this situation has gone. Because at the end of the day, it is sad. I mean, he's not young, but he was a promising manager, and we brought him in to implement this style of football, and the structure wasn't there to allow him to succeed and in some ways save him from himself. And I feel like that's something that needs to get solved under Ineos. And to do that, I think United need a fresh start. I feel like everyone needs to be on board with this new project. I think all the fans need to be. I think everyone at the club needs to be. And I think that's the thing is that means that we need a new manager to oversee it. Because the last thing that Ineos want is to spend all this money and people still be there like,
all right, yeah, get him the hell out of here, will you please? Get him out of here. Throw him out.
I would have loved him to succeed. I loved his Ajax team. I thought it was a great side. I thought he could have really brought that style of football to us. Obviously, that's not worked out. But I think if we're being completely honest and not trying to put emotion into it, when you look at the style of football, when you look at the results, when you look at the money spent on that team, there isn't really an argument to say, give him time, he might figure it out. He's been given time. There isn't any signs he's going to figure it out. And the fact is that in a few months, a new regime is taking over and they don't need to have that baggage of being laboured, starting a project with already 18 months of bad will and other problems behind it. So, with all that in mind, I just think it's the end for Erik ten Hag.